What's up, everyone? It's Wednesday night, so that means it's time for Mythic Conversations. Thank you all for joining me this evening. As always, I am your host, Jeremy Gerard, a Mythic Legions collector and customizer, who also has the distinct privilege of being the Director of Sales and Marketing for Four Horsemen Studios. That means, of course, let me bring up all my little banners here, that everything you see at Source Horseman, the official website for the company, is content that I help bring you. If you are looking to be informed and get the latest information on everything going on in the world of Four Horsemen Studios, that's, of course, where you want to be. You can follow me personally on Instagram. That's at Mythic Customs, all one word. And, of course, I'm also here every Wednesday night doing Mythic Conversations, the weekly show where we talk about all things Legions. We talk about customizing. We talk about news. And we have special guests. I had a great special guest last week. Thank you again to Curtis for joining me. I had to follow that up. I said, after such a great show, how can I follow that up? How can I keep that energy going? So I reached out. I put out the call to the king under the mountain, someone who has been a follower of this show since the very beginning and a dear friend of mine for just as long. Please help me introduce the Toy Forge himself, Anthony Houseal. Anthony.
Hey, everyone. How are we?
Anthony, how are you doing this evening?
Well, I am doing great. Jeremy, let me ask you, how many episodes is this now?
107.
107.
Yep.
107 episodes, and I finally get the invite.
You got to wait for the right time.
Right time.
It's like you can't rush things. Everything in its due course. You got to wait for the right time, you know.
And now is the time.
You're one of my viewers. If I take you and I put you on the show, I knock my viewer count down.
I know. You're like a quarter short of comments going to be in the section tonight.
I know. Well, honestly, I brought you on because lately I've been concerned about you. You've been very preoccupied. You've been like going to like lacrosse games instead
of
hockey.
It's field hockey season. Field hockey season. It's field hockey season.
Field hockey season. So you've been doing that instead of spending the night with me. So I said, you know what? I've got to bring him on. I got to get him away from that field hockey. He's got to be here with his peoples.
You dangled that carrot right in front of me.
I did.
Hey, how about a guest shot? And I said, all right, no problem. And then you give me the challenge of following Curtis. I don't know if I have the eyes like Curtis, but I'll do my best.
No one has the eyes like Curtis.
Not at all.
In all honesty, dude, thank you very, very much for being here this evening. I have looked forward to talking to you live on the show for quite some time. We're going to talk about a bunch of cool stuff tonight. Let's start right away. I mean, there's not a lot of news to talk about other than clearly the end of All-Stars 5+. Yep. So that ended on Sunday. I will say one funny thing. We mentioned this today when they did the afternoon show. The amount of people that placed orders, we let it run for like 5 extra minutes beyond 11 o'clock, which was the end. The amount of people that got their orders in between like 10:55 and 11:05 was staggering. I don't understand why you people waited to the literal last minute to do this. Blows my mind. But they got
Some people like the thrill. It's the thrill of the hunt.
That must be it. They must have been excited for that. I'm going to check out the comments here. See, everyone's just kind of saying hello to you. People saying you're past your bedtime.
Yeah, well, thankfully.
That could be for both of us, dude.
Yeah, your time frame is a little easier for me than the Legion's lounge. That's 2 cups of coffee to make it to the end.
Yeah, this is prime time. That's like late night.
Yes.
Late night programming. So All Stars 5+. I've mentioned this. I've asked this question of a lot of my recent guests when we've talked about All Stars. What were your thoughts on the wave and any particular favorites in the wave? I know there were no dwarves. We're going to talk about dwarves tonight, but barring any dwarves, with a lack of dwarves, was there any figures in there that you really liked a lot?
Before I tell you my thoughts on All Stars, I know there's a couple people out here tonight. They're probably playing the drinking game for every time I say the word dwarf.
Oh, please don't do that.
So for that, dwarf, 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 dwarf. Okay. All Stars. I enjoyed the whole wave as a whole. There was the 3 voted on figures were ones that I were missing. So they will fill in great where I need them to be. The new figures that came out, the new choices, the new tooling, amazing. The head pack is stellar. I mean, you really can't go wrong.
Yep.
For All Stars, I did not go all in. I do have the luxury of going to shows locally and being able to go through retailers and such. So I only went with 2 figures. I went with Dubon and I went with Swig. The Xenothon figure I am very excited about. I did manage to acquire one through PowerCon.
Yep.
Not being there, but just being able to get one through someone. So I should have that in hand shortly, and I can't wait to make a gray skin dwarf out of it. So dwarf.
People are saying that. I do have to bring up this comment from Trevor. As we were talking about his show, he said, "If it's too late, you're too old."
Yep.
Which I feel like is a tagline for Legion's Lounge. I feel like I can see that being a tagline for that. Well, I love the fact that you mentioned Dubon because he is the most dwarf looking of the wave. Clearly not a dwarf, not the stature of a dwarf, but if you had to pick one that is dwarf-like, it would be him. But we did get a dwarf head in that heads pack, which
yes, we did.
I mean, Joran Runeshaper, that is one. It's funny when he actually won the All-Star vote because the fans voted. The 2 heads that they chose were the female knight, which was a repaint of the head that came with Gwendolyn and Delphina, and the dwarf, that only came with Joran. And it's funny because when we first put that head in there, Eric was like, he'd almost forgotten that head even existed. And when he saw Sherry's paintwork on it, he was genuinely amazed at how different that head looks with those new paint applications.
Yeah, that one, that's one of those heads that I only have one. I have it on my Joran as my figure in my collection. Having the option to get more of them and being able to do different variations of it, I'm looking forward to it as a painter, as a customizer. And as someone that's not a painter or a customizer, these are great heads to just pop and swap and go. So,
yeah. Greg asked a question. He says, Dubon question, do you know why he has a sculpted hood instead of soft goods? A lot of the figures like the Elf Ranger and the Shadow Elf, they all have sculpted hood heads. That head was quite frankly done quite some time ago, which is why the tooling's already available. So that's probably one of the reasons why that one came with a sculpted hood head as opposed to it being soft goods. So I do have a question for you that I've been dying to ask, but I waited until tonight.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I don't want to give any spoilers because there might be some people that haven't watched it, but I'm curious, have you watched it yet?
I've watched each episode 3 times.
Each episode 3 times. Okay. So my next question was, did you enjoy it? But I would assume, and I don't know you to be a glutton for punishment, so I assume that you watched it because you enjoyed it so thoroughly.
I am enjoying it a lot. I think so. I'm a fan of the movies. I did not really get the opportunity to read the books, so my love of the lore more lies with the films.
Yep.
And some of the third party or video games or things along those lines. So that being said, I don't feel like I have to be a purist and go, well, it's not this and it's not that. And I mean, if anything has taught me over the years as a comic book fan and the MCU, we have to allow for variations and changes to make things work in the timeframes that are allotted. So I'm loving the show. I think Doran is awesome. I love his wife. I love well, I'm sorry, I don't want to go into too much, but you know, some of the things that, you know, that we're going to find out along the way are great. And then, you know, if anyone argues with me, you know, we can smash rocks over anvils to settle the argument.
I echo your comments. I have read the books. I've very thoroughly enjoyed the movie, but bigger picture, I tend to be someone who tries to evaluate things for what they are versus what they're not. I understand. I mean, another example that came out recently on Netflix is the Sandman series.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of the Sandman comics. They made some legitimate changes for the show, some of which made perfect sense. I saw a lot of people complain that it wasn't a page for page literal recreation of the comic. I don't need that. Similarly with this particular show, I'm not such a purist that I need it to be exactly what I'd expect. I want to be surprised. I want to see different takes on it. I'm thoroughly enjoying it as well. This is not a real big spoiler. People know there are dwarves in Lord of the Rings. Seeing the scenes with the dwarves, seeing the environments, I was blown away.
Yeah.
Absolutely blown away. It's stunning. I cannot wait for more of that series, frankly.
And the inspiration is just for ideas and wanting to do stuff is like it's been on fire. Like I watched an episode and saw a particular item that I was a fan of and was like, okay, let's start figuring out how we can make this come to life. And by the end of the weekend, I have something that, you know, goes pretty well with that series already.
Curtis got a good question for you. He says, what is your favorite non-Lord of the Ring dwarves in TV or movies? He says he's going with the Witcher dwarves. But
can we expand the media out a little bit further outside of just TV or movies?
You can, because it's my show and I'm going to allow it.
Well, if we're allowing it, I am currently loving the audiobook series, The Dwarves. It's done by a German author. I am currently finishing up book 4 of the 5 that are available right now. I don't know how to put it into words, but when you read this, I mean, the dwarves are just these fierce warriors, and you really want to get behind them. And you want to cheer guys on, and the different variations. They're not all just the same. They're different. They're different races of the dwarves, the firstlings and the secondlings and the thirdlings, and then they're undergroundlings and the freelings. It's a great series. If anyone has, you know, like 150 hours of free time and you want to just put it on in the background to listen to, feel free to do so. I do a lot of driving with work, so it's nothing for me to finish a 26 hour book in a couple days. You know, if I just throw them on, as long as there's not a new My Wife Is Going to Kill Me episode or Podcasters of the Universe or a Lencast. I mean, Legions cast. We'll be ready to listen to the audiobooks. So
I will then go back to Curtis's question. In actual TVs and movie and stuff like that, is there a dwarf outside of Lord of the Rings that stands out to you?
Well, Brunner Battlehammer from the Dritz series.
Somebody else mentioned that. Maverick mentioned that.
I mean, for TV shows, the Witcher dwarves were kind of fun. They seem like guys you wouldn't mind hanging out, you know, grabbing a drink with and going on some sort of crazy, zany dragon hunting mission.
Okay. Very good. I thought you were going to go with the classic 7 dwarves.
No. No.
What's wrong with the 7 dwarves?
Well, I mean, if we remove the Disney aspect of it, because they're just too happy-go-lucky for my taste. They're, I don't know.
Happy dwarves can be happy.
Sure, and
They're drinking. They've got their beards. A lot of people asking for you to show the gritty custom. Do you have the gritty custom at your fingertips?
I do. I do. Give me 1 second. I kind of figured this might happen.
So Eric's saying the Rankin Bass Hobbit movie is my dwarf archetype.
Yes,
I grew up with that one, so I love
I did
that.
too, but I figured we were avoiding Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings.
they said not Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but yes, those would have been great. So, fun story about the gritty custom is that Len LaGuardia said, "Hey, I'm working on something." And he showed me the picture, and I went, "Oh my God, is that what I think it is?" And he said, "Yes." And we said, "Okay, how can we make this work?" So this is the gritty custom.
Which I didn't know what that was. I'm not sure if you showed it to me or Len showed it to me, but I genuinely didn't understand what it was. So for people outside of your general area, what the heck is that?
It's gritty.
What is gritty? Who is gritty?
Gritty is the mascot of the Philadelphia Flyers. You can't go wrong with googly eyes. I mean, look, we've got the Philly Fanatic, and we've got Gritty, and we've got the other mascots who are nowhere near as famous. We've got Swoop, but we've got Gritty, and we've got the Philly Fanatic. So we're known for interesting fan base and better mascots.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not one for sports ball myself, so that went right over my head. I didn't recognize it. I have since looked up who the character is so I can familiarize myself, and it is a very cool custom that is cool that it's local to you guys.
We just need an ogre scale piece of tomato pie, Len, and a soft pretzel, and maybe some water ice, and we will be good to go. This will be a full set that we should put out in ogre scale. No pressure, but that's what we got to do.
That's what you got to do. Okay, very cool. So moving on a little bit, you have been collecting. Let's go back to your history a little bit. So I've known you for quite a while. I've known you in the Mythic community. Tell me a little bit, or I know the answer, but tell my audience a little bit about how you came to the Mythic Legions line, how you became a collector.
Once again, like the amazing, beautifully eyed Curtis Ackerman, I blame this all on Lord Stephen Bisciotti. I was a diehard 1/18 4-inch or go home lover of action figures. I grew up G.I. Joe, He-Man and all that stuff, but like G.I. Joe was my hardcore scale. And then when I saw that the Vitruvian Hacks from Boss Fight Studios had done fantasy stuff, I was in love. They were doing Spartans, they were doing Gorgons, they were doing barbarians and knights and all of that stuff, and it was amazing. And Steven's like, "Yeah, that's great, but it should be bigger. Have you ever thought about like 1/12 scale?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I guess." He said, "Well, I'll send you one." I'm like, "No, don't send me one. Don't. It's the biggest. That's my regret. My Mythic Legion regret is not letting Steven send me one, because I could have gotten one from him free right off the bat." So I went to ZoloCon 2018, I think it was.
Okay.
At the time, the Horsemen still had stuff from Series 1, from the first wave. So my first two figures were Attilas, and both are Shadowhorn.
Okay.
And I just was like, these are great. These are fun. I get it. And then I think there was a pre-order for Advent of Decay, right?
Yeah.
Not the Kickstarter, but like a pre-order.
There was.
And I had pre-ordered
the Kickstarter.
Correct.
There was a whole like months later.
Correct.
You could order it on the site.
I had gotten King Bromden in that.
Okay.
And then along the way, because I thought that was cool. I was like, oh, I like the dwarf. I like both are. I like what was going on. That was the start of the addiction. And then I acquired a cavern dwarf and a warrior, and then got Bromden. And then shortly afterwards, I was able to get Freya, and just the list just keeps going on and on and on. And it just was. I went to I remember the in-stock sale for Coliseum Weave.
Yep.
And I really only wanted Adamon, and accidentally added Halmir to my order, and was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And it just kept compiling on top of one another. And now there's no looking back.
Now let's go back to that ZoloCon 2018. Sure. And you also mentioned Mythic mistakes. You're referencing the most recent episode of Legions Cast, where myself, along with my co-hosts, Stephen Bisciotti and Len LaGuardia, all talked about the mistakes that we've made throughout the years in collecting. That's episode 37. But in that episode, Len talks about going to ZoloCon and getting his first figures. Are we talking about the same ZoloCon?
This is probably the same ZoloCon, but Len and I never knew each other. Len and I probably ran in so many different circles and shows because of RetroCon and ZoloCon and shows like that we had no idea who we were. And then, again, the Lord, Stephen Bisciotti, and his cast of miscreants and other gentlemen, let's just say, started the show. And we then started, I don't know how, started listening to the same show and started striking up a friendship. And we met for the first time at RetroCon 2019.
Okay.
And then from 2019, then we went to LegionsCon for the first time.
Which is another thing I was going to talk about. That was the first time that I met you. I had spoken to you prior to that, because I remember at that first LegionsCon, we were talking prior to LegionsCon about G.I. Joe figures, and you're a big rock and roll fan.
My favorite G.I. Joe.
And I had done a tribute to rock and roll as a dwarf. I brought it to LegionsCon to show specifically because of the conversation I had with you. So I remember meeting you for the first time at LegionsCon, and I couldn't find the picture before tonight, but that was where I first met you, Len, and Cookie. Yes. Because the three of you all had the shirts on of, at the time, the three hosts of the My Wife Is Gonna Kill Me podcast, because they couldn't make it out to the show in person, one of Steven's Mythic mistakes. So you brought them on your actual shirt. So you had just met Len and Cookie at that point?
I think that was the first time I met Cookie.
Okay.
At the show. And Patrick Boyle, which that was another fun story. That was one of those. Patrick posted in the Cabal, hey, I need a ride to LegionsCon, and he showed where he was, like, on the map, and I went, I have to pass through there. Oh, what the hell? I'll grab you, no problem. And what was funny is, before I go to bed that night, my wife goes, you don't think like he's this crazed criminal that might like kill you or anything? I'm like, well, I got to get to the show and I got to bring him back home before he has to kill me. I'll figure it out before then. And conveniently, Pat said that his wife kind of mentioned a similar story to him. Who's the guy to be willing to just pick up some stranger and take him out to a place? And
that's the Cabal.
That's the Cabal. I mean, Cabal above all, right, Walter?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy looking back at that. So you are officially a LegionsCon OG. Hold on a minute.
Oh boy.
So I've got my badges here. So you are one of the few people that has one of these, right?
Do you want me to go get mine?
No, it's okay. You have one of these.
I do.
November 9th, 2019. This is the exhibitor badge for the very, very first LegionsCon. And we've talked about this before. This was an after party. This was Joe Viteri after G-Con calling me and saying, what do you think about doing like a Mythic meetup type thing? We were like, yeah, that was the first name. We were going to call it Mythic Meetup. We messed around with a couple different ideas to do before we landed on LegionsCon, which is admittedly not the most original name. But I remember that first evening, that get together after hours. And not only was that the first time I met you, but it was a weird mix because there was a lot of people that floated in from ToyCon that didn't really know what was going on. It was a free show, so we didn't charge anything. People just kind of walked around. But then after that initial crowd kind of came through, saw stuff and left, there was a smaller group that stuck around for the entire duration, and you were part of that group.
Yeah, we were pretty much escorted out by security.
Yeah, I mean, but it's crazy. It's really fun to look back on that experience, I think. But it's also crazy to think where we've come and what we're planning for this year, knowing those humble origins that you were a part of.
Yeah, it's funny we go back to that rock and roll figure. I have that in my collection now, thanks to you.
Yep.
It's one of the things that I cherish very much. I have my own official Mythic Customs custom.
That was a gift for you for a very special occasion.
Yeah, that was a good time.
So if I remember correctly, your appearance at LegionsCon, you weren't even originally on the exhibitor list.
I barged my way in.
In true dwarven fashion,
yeah.
You just came in and you made yourself at home. You set up your forge and you said, I'm here, I'm exhibiting, and you did your thing.
I did. I brought my forged in foam set with the working blacksmith forge and everything, and I had my custom dwarf. And no, I didn't have my custom dwarf. I made my custom dwarf that weekend after we had gotten the Torgen figures because he was part of the early release
there.
So I took him home and right away started chopping and adding all kinds of crazy soft goods and yeah, that was great. That was such a fun show.
We've got Matt Rhodes here in the comments saying LegionsCon 2019 was awesome, meeting both Anthony, Patrick, and everyone. And it's a cool story because Matt, you, and Patrick all came down and had stuff and brought stuff and showed stuff off just kind of unannounced. At that first LegionsCon, we kind of tried to have a table or two for people just to throw some stuff on. And it's amazing that you guys have kind of stuck with us the whole time. You've been a part of every single LegionsCon. Matt and Patrick were exhibitors last year, and they're both exhibitors, of course, along with you this year as well. So that is very, very cool to see that kind of growth and to know that we've all been able to do it together.
And Matt Rhodes actually lives the same distance further west to me than Patrick does to the east. So we're all within 45 minutes of each other.
So let me bring this up really quick because one of the things that we shared today was the LegionsCon mat. Did you have a chance to look this over?
I've looked it over. I like my placement.
You like your placement. So we'll talk more about this as we get closer and everything. But as people are looking at this, and there is, if you go to legionscon.com and you click the guests, there's a link right there where you can actually download a PDF version of this because as you look at this, it may be hard to see who's who, who's this photo of and stuff like that. If you download the PDF version, it actually has a second page that lists all of the exhibitors and what their tables are. So you can start to hopefully plan, your plan of attack for the show. What I've told people is the way that this venue works is there's an entranceway outside that you would be coming in. The entranceway really would run kind of parallel to the bottom here of the map where these 3 green boxes are. Those are doors. So what's going to happen is when people come to the show, they can go in any of those 3 doors and get to any of the tables, with the exception of these red tables. You can see we're going to block these red tables off because those are where 4 Horsemen are and where the LegionsCon figures are going to be. That final door, there's going to be a separate hallway that will route the line around, just because it'll allow us to better control the crowd. So everyone will have to make the decision whether they want to get in that line and hit those tables first and then filter into the show, or whether they just want to get into the show, see everything else, and then maybe hit the tables later in the day when the crowds are a little thinner at those really high traffic tables. But Anthony, you mentioned your spot here. So you were at table number 40. So you are surrounded. You have your, just mentioning Patrick. So Patrick is on one side of you, and the My Wife Is Going to Kill Me podcast crew are on the other side. I have a feeling that that's going to be a very heavily trafficked spot because people are going to be asking those guys for a lot of autographs.
It's probably going to be loud too.
Well, Pete will be there. I think the combination of Pete, his normal volume, and just his pure adrenaline at all the attention being focused on him, that's going to be like Pete to the extreme.
Yes, definitely.
I'm looking forward to it. But it is a very cool row. I'm in that row, so yay. I mean, we've got, it's funny because if you look at any section of this, you can look at this section and say, wow, this is Nate Barch, me, Strupp Family Crafts, Patrick Boyle, Anthony Houseal from Toy Forge. My Wife Is Going to Kill Me. We've got Emil Wickman. We've got, Alexander DeShore from Drunk Gizmo Customs. It's just one after another here. But it's like that for everything. You look up here and we've got Crashbox Customs in the corner, Von Burke, Eric LeBron, Noble Bear, Brian Almeida, Luis Torres, Kingpin Customs, everything, Legion Shop, Wolf King Customs. It's literally just nonstop. Tons and tons of people. I mean, knowing what that first year was like and then seeing this map, pretty exciting, right?
It's quite the evolution.
Yeah, it's
I'm very happy how much it's grown and can't wait to see what LegionsCon 10 looks like. I'm already looking forward to it.
Well, I'm already looking forward to LegionsCon 5 because, crazy as it may seem, we're 2 months away from LegionsCon 4 and we are already talking about what next year looks like. It's crazy that the cycle doesn't end. We start planning next year before this year even happens. For the people that are asking where certain people are, again, go to legionscon.com. You can download the map there. It's a PDF. You can get all that information so you can really see where everyone is going to be. I will remind everybody that if they do want to go to the show, tickets are being sold now at legionscon.com. They do continue to go fast. We still have quite a few, but they're running lower and lower every single day. Lots of people are jumping on as we get closer. And based on what we just saw for that rush towards the end on All-Stars 5, I expect a similar rush towards the end for LegionsCon. And let me be very clear, there are a limited number of tickets. There will be a point that we could sell out. So if you plan on going, don't wait till the last minute. Get your tickets early.
So, Jeremy, real quick, I did mention today when I shared that I was going to be on tonight that I would have maybe a guest along the way.
Oh, okay. And, who do we have with us? Oh,
hey.
This guy. How are you tonight, buddy?
Hey, who is it?
Uncle Jeremy.
It's Uncle Jeremy. Say hi, Uncle Jeremy.
Hi, buddy. How are you this evening?
Good.
You're on the show.
You're on TV. I bet you're on TV upstairs on the big TV. Isn't that exciting?
Wow.
So what do you say to everyone? Say goodnight, everyone. Hey, remember? Do it. Right? All right. Have a good night, okay? Love you. Okay,
hey, thank you for coming on.
There we go. All right. he wanted to come on and say hello.
Oh, of course. We absolutely have to. One of my biggest regrets for not being able to go to RetroCon in a few weeks is not being able to meet you guys, meet your family in person and stuff. So this doesn't replace that, but it's at least a nice consolation prize.
Yes.
So LegionsCon, I'm super excited for it. I'm excited, as I've mentioned before, for setup night. The fact that, unlike last year with that mad dash to get everything done, that we're going to actually have a little bit of time to hopefully set up and enjoy each other's company beforehand.
Yeah, that'll be nice. That's a couple things that I regret, when we're adding to our regrets, is not really spending time to appreciate everyone else's tables and their art and their craft. And you're just so focused on people coming through and trying to either show off your stuff or sell your wares or whatever it was. And what that morning setup was like.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just get out of bed, get there and get set up. I mean, it was kind of funny because it was cold the night before and all of our stuff was in the car overnight and just cold. So you're like trying to be careful with like the customs, and then you're also trying to hurry. I ended up like ripping my finger apart and just looked at it and was like, I don't have time to bleed, and just grabbed some duct tape, wrapped my finger up, and just kept on going to set up because there wasn't time to, have Pete, provide medical attention because, he would have still be reminding me to this day about it. But I just had to keep going to get the show done. And it's just how how we had to do it. But it'll be nice to just kind of go, okay, I want to put this here. Hey, what do you think? Should I put this? Be able to interact and talk with people and help others get set up, and then just to be able to go walk around and talk with everyone and have a good time.
Well, and then having 2 full days to be able to do it, not having that mad dash. Because when you set up for a show and then have to do the show in the same day, there's already a level of energy. Your adrenaline is just weird. I know that last year, after the adrenaline of setup and then that initial rush of everyone coming in, it's like, it feels like by the time you caught your breath, it was like 1:00.
Yes.
And you're like, the show's literally half done. And I don't even know what happened yet. Like, I feel like I've just been coasting on the wave of what's going on. So
I haven't eaten and I haven't drank anything, and I didn't pee all day. And it was just the time you were just so caught up in the moment that and then you have the ride home and you're like, okay. And then you're just finally starting to breathe and you're like, man, there was just so much regret not being able to do more. But we don't have that problem this year. We've got.
I think this year is going to be a much better overall scenario. So I'm looking forward to it. And before we get to LegionsCon, the road to LegionsCon, I mentioned RetroCon. So I'm not going to RetroCon. Obviously, Four Horsemen Studios will be there. They will have a whole display, stuff for sale, members of the studio team. And you are going to be at RetroCon as well, correct?
I am. I am going to be riding the coattails of the Wolf King, and I'll have a small little spot there to be able to, help promote the line, the product, some of our stuff, to be able to help accessorize all your Mythic Legion parts. RetroCon, with the exception of obviously LegionsCon, is probably my favorite show of the year. It helps that it's 10 minutes from home. The fact that it is as large as it is not only encompasses the vintage toys, the modern toys, comic books, cosplay, video games. There'll be karaoke contests. There'll be trivia contests. There's going to be all this stuff. I mean, aisles upon aisles upon aisles of just nerd awesomeness. It's so much fun. I've
heard it's a great show. Like I said, I genuinely was excited to go. But
Tony and Rose do a fantastic job running the show. They're the nicest people. I can't speak highly enough about them. And the fact that I get to actually be able to be at the show as a vendor this year is exciting.
What are the dates for RetroCon? And
it is September,
Philly, right?
It's in Oaks, Pennsylvania, which is 20-ish miles outside of Philadelphia area. It's Saturday, September 24th and the 25th. I can't tell you the start time off the top of my head, but I want to say it's like a 9 to 4 or 9 to 5 show, somewhere in that general time frame. I believe there's probably some form of early admission. You can buy tickets in advance. And yeah, and the horsemen are going to be there now. I mean, you can't, the most amazing show. And guess what? We're going to make it even better because we're going to put the horsemen on there.
Yeah. And it'll be cool because like we saw at ZoloCon last year, which was a ton of fun, that combination of having the horsemen with their stuff and then having Wolf King set up with all of the custom stuff. You were there, Patrick was there, and all of that. That was a really nice combination display of the figures and the customs. I think it's going to be a really good show. So if you're in that area, you're looking for a precursor to LegionsCon, that's certainly a great show that you can check out. And on that note, talking about custom parts, so we talked about your entry into the Legions community and Legions collecting, but let's change gears a little bit because you are known as the Toy Forge. You are a customizer. You are a parts creator. You are one of the artists at Legion Shop. I could go on. Tell us a little bit about how your transition went from just being a casual fan of the line to wanting to dip your toes in the customizing and the creating waters.
Well, that goes back to me as a child and my love of particular action figures. It was G.I. Joe. A thumb broke on Flint. Well, all right, let's find a character that had the same thing. Let's unscrew the back. Let's swap it out. Let's, put, wetsuit in jungle fatigues. Let's do something, I don't know, let's do something crazy. So I've been customizing figures for forever. And I did the same thing with the Vitruvian hack. So when I got these figures and I started getting extra stuff, it was just trying to figure out what I could do to start customizing with these. And then I realized how easy it was to pop and swap parts. And, oh, wow, I didn't realize this part comes off. And, oh, hey, I could put this on there. And you can only get so far with what you can buy where you're like, I need something. They don't make it. How do we get around it? And that's when you start finding some of the third-party companies that came out and started providing different parts and pieces. And you start learning of the different sculptors. And you're just like, how can I get involved in this? And you start with something like, oh, I'm going to get a printer. And I bought something, my wife had gotten me something for Christmas. And I started small and started working my way up there. And I think I had sold my first part in like February of 2019 and just kind of kept going from there. And at the same time, you had reached out to me because that was at the part of your critter craze had begun with the Fox. And
you're the one that directed me to Lennon Wolfgang Customs.
And I still, to this day, that is not a regret saying I'm still happy that I did not say yes to you because there's no way I could keep up with what your output is. And I said, look, if you want to do this, you need to talk to the guy that I go to. And that's Len. That's Len LaGuardia. That's Wolf King Customs. And you and him and Walter and Ian Neal and everyone else that you've been involved in, Gianna and all those guys, like you're just constantly putting out amazing stuff. So that's where we went from there. And then Travis Cannon had said, hey, because Travis had used to sculpt in just clay and was making casting. And him and I had struck up a friendship, and he said, I'm getting involved in some of the digital sculpting, and we tried figuring out some stuff that could work, and this worked, that didn't work, or whatever. And next thing you know, we do a whole line of dwarven heads that said, okay, this is cool. This is what I want to start doing. And we were trying to do stuff that way. And, things get busy, things get, with real life. And that's the crazy thing with all of this is that we're trying to do all of these customs, all of these amazing works of art, and we're still trying to hold down real jobs with family and commitments and all that other stuff. So it becomes a challenge to try to work that in between. So Travis kind of got, busy with life and work and stuff like that. And at any given moment, he would say, "Hey, I got something, I can't wait to do the next project with him." And then I kind of took a break for a while with heads and was just kind of, I can't sculpt digitally, but like I can put together weapons and fun accessories and stuff like that. So I just stuck with that for a long time. And then along came my buddy Chris Ferrone, who I see in the threads tonight. We started chatting. This was at the time he was working on his Mythic bits and the beards.
Yep.
The beard craze that just blew up way bigger than anyone expected. And he said, "Hey, I got this designer that did the beards. Maybe you should talk to him and start working on some stuff." So I got back into the head game, starting doing some crazy stuff, and I want to try to do things that we haven't seen before. So that's where we came up with the fungus folk, and we're doing kobolds, and I've got all sorts of other crazy ideas that I want to do down the line, and also still make the weapons and the fun things that I enjoy doing.
I actually have one of those guys right here. So you're talking about this mushroom character, fungus folk. This was this is a piece available at Legion Shop, and this is an example of what you're talking about. One of your crazier designs lately.
And what I did with that one is, I know the neck pegs are always an issue that people run into. So I went ahead for this one and just integrated a neck peg into it. So that allows you to be able to utilize it for something else. But while we're showing off parts and pieces, the next fungus folk, which is Bello, which is fun because not only does he have the head, he also has a separate collar, which is fun. And I gave him a hat. He's got more of a derby, or more of a driver style hat, and he's got this amazing mustache. I mean, can't go wrong. I mean, contrary to what Len says, mustaches are cool.
We know how Len feels about mustache. Well, you mentioned, I have a couple photos here. So to follow up on some of the things you mentioned, stuff you've been working on lately. This is something you put out recently through Toy Forge. So you do sell products. You are one of the artists at Legion Shop, as I mentioned, but you do also maintain a certain catalog of parts that you sell directly yourself as the Toy Forge. And that includes this awesome set that you put together recently for the month of August, correct?
Yeah, I went kind of nuts for Ram Month. I found a theme and just kind of kept going with it. And I think the first of it was the Warhammer, the War Pick.
Yeah.
So again, going back to the audiobooks, one of the characters in the series, goes by the name of Ironheart. He has a twin brother that dies, and his brother gives him his crow's beak, his war pick to use. And I was thinking about trying to do something along those lines. And then, I don't know, I was just kind of going, a ram would be kind of neat on the front of that head. And then I went and I did that. And then I thought, you know what, maybe a sword would be cool. So I did a matching sword, and I went, well, why not have the shield? So and I've made big honking shields before, and we have them in Legion Shop. We got the one where
power shields,
where that sword, fits inside of it. So I made this shield, and as you can see, I've got, a series of chest plates that will debut at RetroCon. I will have them unpainted and a bunch painted as well.
Awesome.
So we'll be able to see them at RetroCon. And then that head was originally well, it still is the first head that I had done with Diago Conti, my designer right now, is we had done a dwarven head, and the beard is cool, but he's got eyes, and I'm like, I want to make something easier for the community to do because eyes can be difficult. Yeah. So we went with a generic builder head that matches pretty well with that King Uthek head. So I just thought this is a cool pairing altogether. And then to top it off, I went ahead and I sell the Jason Rodriguez Fenheim dwarf set. But to be perfectly honest, my favorite part of that whole set are those boots.
Yeah.
I have messed with a lot of third-party boots or feet, and these are perfectly balanced. Now, I mean, the dwarves in general, you never worry about them tipping over,
Yeah.
but these boots create such an additional level of um, stability and form and function that you really can't beat it.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and I did them to go with the whole set.
Yeah, you sent me some. I posted a dwarf custom today, and it used those boots. You sent me a pair to look at, and I'll absolutely share here what I said to you privately was the fit of those particular pieces were the best third party feet I've ever used. They fit in so well, just the socket, the peg, the balance that you mentioned, they were absolutely wonderful. And they're a very cool style. They're different than the dwarven feet we've gotten in the line, so far. So it was nice to add that and just immediately change up that look.
Well, what's funny with that is the worst part of that whole process was getting them out of the Mythic Legion foot.
Yeah.
And because it's the boil, the pop to get them out there, and they drop in, they lock, and you're good to go. And I haven't had one pop out yet, and I've got
they're good
9 or 10 customs now with those feet, and they're great.
So, going to comment here from a fellow dwarven lover, fellow king under the mountain, Joe Vassapolo, my friend, says, I have money for you, Anthony, maybe too much.
No, there's never too much, buddy. Never too much. I see Curtis mentioned, where is that at here? Let me go back here. Curtis talked about the battle ram that I had done.
Yep.
So that's actually a fun project. And what's kind of cool with the Toy Forge, as we're evolving more and more, is how family friendly or how family focused or family involved. As you see in the comments, I see my daughter is in there chatting, and my brother Mark is in there, and we had Tony here earlier, but I've had my dad get involved in some of the stuff. He actually early on, I had gotten a Maltard, the duck from the Etheron's dozen wave, right?
Yep.
And I gotten a pair of green wings, and I was like, I want this to match. And my dad had airbrushed. He was back in like the 70s and early 80s. He was doing a lot of fishing. He was a bassmaster at one point, and
wait. I had to stop you.
Yes,
because you said airbrushing in 70s, your father, and I immediately thought you were going to say that he painted like those giant fantasy scenes on like conversion vans.
So,
and you went in a totally different direction. And
well,
you went airbrushing 70s to fishing.
But so to be honest, he probably could have done a pretty cool Frazetta, art piece on the side of a van, maybe like a Bronco, like just across the back, something like that would have looked really, really sharp.
Mm-hmm.
But he used to paint fishing lures and the spoons and all that stuff. So he was really good at matching stuff up to look like feathers and things like that. Yep. So I'd given him what I wanted to do, and he had done the wings so that they match up to the stripes under the duck. So when the wings are out, it looks like it's a part of it. Yep. And lately his newest venture is gourds, decorative gourds. Now you guys see back here, I'm trying to figure, there we go. I've got one of the gourds that my dad had done. But he had also done one for Walter for the Cabal. But he has this real cool device. It's called it's fracking. So what it is it's voltage running through wet wood. And what it does is it finds the grains of the wood and it electrifies and burns it into all this really cool engraving. So I had a bunch of these dowel rods, and I just thought I wanted to try something. So I ended up doing a battling ram. And I don't know if you can see, but like all of these marks that you see in here,
yep,
it's actually the wood that's burned from the electricity. So each one is different. I can't make them the same, no matter how hard I try. So because all the pieces are different. So I just incorporated some of his, equipment and time. And then I went ahead and I printed the parts to make the handles for it, and I had them at ZoloCon, and they became such a success that I'm bringing a handful to RetroCon, and I will have a handful at LegionsCon as well. So Curtis, you will be taken care of.
Very cool. Very cool. And I love the idea of you so safely putting electric charges through wet wood so you can burn lines into them. That
I wore rubber gloves.
well, then clearly that must have been the height of safety.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I did it, and I live streamed it the one time. So it was great.
Your brother, fracking is extremely cool and dangerous. My dad won't even let me turn the thing on, yet he lets Anthony make battle rams.
Well, in Mark's defense, Mark's also not allowed in that garage because there's a lot of power tools in there.
So let's talk about Mark, because I met Mark.
Do we have to?
We do.
Okay.
I met Mark for the first time at Intern for a Day. At least that's the first time I remember meeting him. Maybe I met him before.
No.
But the first time that he made an impression, did I meet him beforehand?
You met him at ZoloCon.
Oh no, I did meet him at ZoloCon. That's right, because I met him and his daughter, and she had the awesome custom. I do remember that. So yes. What I will say is I met Mark very briefly at ZoloCon. I engaged with Mark much more at Intern for a Day, and I'm curious, how does this happen? Like, how do you feel that another Houseal has come in and is trying to steal the Mythic spotlight from you?
All right, so I have mixed emotions on this. I love the fact that I can share this hobby with members of my family. I love my wife to death, and you met her earlier in the green room. And I'm sure she's tired of me talking about, hey, they're going to do a cosmic line. I hope we get cosmic dwarfs soon. Or, hey, All Stars is coming out. I need to put money down, and don't worry, I'm good for it. Or, hey, I got a bonus coming. I'd like to spend some. I love her, and she is a saint for putting up with me. Like there's she put together my 40th birthday, and it was like, okay, let's get the guys from the Cabal together and go do, like, she's awesome. Like she deserves a moment. She deserves her moment on the show tonight. But it's nice having someone else that I can talk to about it. Yeah. But in the same sense where I might chat with Patrick Boyle about stuff where we know Mythic Legions 101, sometimes I have to go back and go, okay, Mark, in the back of a goblin, there's this little thing called a boom boom cover where there's a hole in there and you can put a tail in there. Well, I've been ripping at it for 2 hours. I can't. Mark, take your fingernail and just catch the underneath of it. And then I'll go, oh, okay. And then, then we're good.
But yes.
Yeah. So it's fun. It's fun going through it, watching him, in his first year as a fan, going, enjoying it. But sometimes it's like, we're at a family, like we're at your daughter's birthday party. Let's not talk about Legions right now. So sometimes we have to, or he'll start chiming about, oh yeah, I got this guy. And I'm like, you don't have this guy. I have this guy that you met. And now he's your guy because he was my guy in the first place. So
I can tell you that I have a daughter and I've been to her birthday party and there's no one there that wants to talk Legions with me, and it sucks. So I think you should stop complaining about being at a family gathering and being forced to talk about Legions, because that sounds pretty cool to
me. Colin says, sounds like he needs to read more Source Horseman articles.
Yeah, I do think, and Cullen is, by the way, the unsung hero of the Source Horseman articles, because he regularly will send me text messages pointing out spelling mistakes and errors in those articles. It is brutally difficult to edit your own content. I try very, very hard, and I would suggest that the fact that he only finds usually one or maybe two in an article is a testament to how hard I try to edit them, but stuff slips through. So Cullen keeps me honest. He sends me those little mistakes that I have to fix, and I thank him very much for that.
Cullen, the editor.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it's fun. It actually is a lot of fun because we're actually working now on a couple joint ideas that we're hoping to have ready to go by
Very cool.
LegionsCon. You've had an opportunity to see some of those,
Yep.
and we're hoping to have like a full kit by LegionsCon that we'll be
Very
able
cool.
to put out there for people to purchase.
On the subject of wives, we do have Braku Prime that says all of our wives are the unsung heroes of our hobby. And then we get a retort from Lord Stevens saying, my wife is the lucky one. So,
Of course.
very much on brand tonight in the comments here.
Can we go back to the Lord for a minute? That I think we can publicly announce that not only am I doing the show tonight from my daughter's room, but this is also Lord Stephen's East Coast tavern room when he sleeps on the weekends. I have the utmost pleasure and distinct privilege, if I may, for a moment, to pick up not only Stephen but Walter as well. I'm housing both Walter and Stephen for the weekend.
Are they going to be in the same room?
I'm still heads and tails how I want. How uncomfortable do we want to make Stephen?
I do have to put this comment on because Joe Vassopolo says my wife is also very lucky, but then he follows up with she'll have tons of awesome toys to sell and get rich from after she kills me. I like that. But yes, I do love the idea of the two of them sharing a room. I don't know how it will go. Stephen asked to share a room with me recently at an upcoming event, and I actually told him no. That's not how I roll.
Well, I don't think
I'm past the sleepover phase in my life.
I don't think Walter will sleep much because I don't think Walter sleeps much.
I know he doesn't.
And with Stephen's CPAP machine probably blaring at full steam ahead, maybe for the benefit of everyone, we might just separate them. So
that might be better.
One can fight over the twin size bed and the other can fight over the inflatable mattress.
So I do have another photo I want to show here. You were mentioning earlier working on weapons and stuff that you've sculpted, and these are something that I showed on Legion's Shop's Instagram earlier today. So this is a set. I showed the custom on the right. I showed that a few weeks ago, but this uses some parts that you created specifically for kind of a little Viking weapon, Northman weapon type set to go with perhaps the deluxe Legion Builder Barbarian. Tell us a little bit about these particular weapons.
So aside from dwarves, and that reminds me, for those trying to keep up with shots, dwarves. Okay, dwarves. So what I did was I love the Vikings as much as I do the dwarves. I love the Norse mythology. I love the idea of them as raiders and farmers and sailors. And look, I mean, we wouldn't have a lot of what we have today without some of these guys. And some of their weapons at the time were, they're works of art. And I wanted to make a weapon set. Well, we had talked about doing a set for, we wanted to do a fun set. And originally I'd made the sword first. And if I remember, we were conversing about it and you're like, maybe we can make it more. And I was like, no, this is, and I had sent you some reference photos of what like more of a traditional Viking sword, would be something that you could see. It's a little more ornate probably than your typical, Viking, but it's a lot of fun. Yep. And then we went ahead and I wanted to do a Dane axe because I felt like that's one of those symbols of a Viking, like those weapons that you see there. Like when you think Viking, you see those weapons. Mm-hmm. The only thing missing was a shield, but we have a lot of shields that are out there that you can pick and choose from anywhere and create your Viking and be able to put a shield on there. So the Sax knife is actually kind of funny. One of my earliest things that I had done was work with a designer, Joe Alcorn, and I had him make a Sax knife for me. And that was actually I think it might have been the first item that I had available, from the Toy Forge. So I wanted to do a different version. So the handle, it's going to be it's hard to tell because it's in, the gray scale, but once you paint it, it's got a bone-like texture to it, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I went ahead and I have. Yeah, no problem.
I'm gonna give you solo layout so we can see what you're gonna show. There you go.
So what I did was I went ahead and I made my Viking. This is the Kai Labs set that works for dwarves or for Vikings or whatever. And I've had this Atamon sitting in my bucket for so long, and I just wanted to do something with it. And I thought, you know what? Let's do Vikings. Let's go ahead and make him, because this looks like a Viking Raider. So I went ahead and I did the parts, and not to say, hey, my parts or whatever, but like this was fun and easy to paint. A lot of straight lines, not a lot of hard work to try to get all kinds of crazy details. The fuller in the sword is deep enough to where if you were to take your wash, your Nolan oil or whatever, you should be able to run a bead in that line and be able to cover that fully and have no problems doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot of people getting them to be able to upgrade their Vikings and make something new or something creative with them.
And super exciting. So this particular set that you see here, it's got the Dane axe, it's got the sword, which you're right. When you showed me the sword originally, I was like, it's not really what I'm thinking of. And you painted one and sent it to me, and seeing it in hand and feeling it, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I love this. Totally turned me around on that. And then it comes with the knife. So the set is the 3 weapons. But as a little bonus for the first run of these, you actually threw an additional knife in there, as you see here. So this particular set is going to hit Legion Shop. I think we're going to actually drop these on the site for sale this coming Friday.
Okay.
Check out the Legion Shop Instagram page if you want to learn more about the exact time. Probably be around noontime. But super cool. This set's going to cost $20. So that's an incredibly cool value. You specifically said, hey, I want to do something special. I want to give the fans a really cool set at a really good price. The fact that you're going to get 3 weapons in for the first run, a bonus 4th weapon for that price is pretty darn cool.
I will warn you, those points on those Sax knives, they'll break skin. So be careful. Be careful with them.
Very cool. So let's go back to talking about dwarves. I know you and many of the other kings have been very upset lately that you feel like dwarves are not getting their due in Mythic Legions. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna just say it. The dwarves are the best race / people in all of Mythos, and the fact that we've gotten a raw deal the past couple waves is a gross understatement. And I'm just bothered by it, and there's a lot of people that are bothered by it. We're not getting cosmic dwarves. We're not getting regular dwarves. We're not getting, I don't know. Maybe we'll get a skeleton dwarf. I don't know. We got a big wave coming out here in the future, but we're not getting enough dwarves. There should be a dwarf in every wave, just like there should be a goblin in every wave. And before you say it, I know you're going to say it, and I'm going to do it right now. Statistically speaking, the dwarves always undersold compared to everyone else, and blah, 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 blah. That's the past. This is now. We've got the Kings under the Mountain. We've got a huge fan base. I say dwarf in every wave, and this is the decade of the dwarf. Oh, and I'm done.
So I do have some figures here. I'm going to go to wide view. I was actually going to put some stuff together on camera tonight, but I've been enjoying the conversation. And I got to tell you, I think you need to change your language a little bit. Because when you say you've got no dwarves lately, you want more named dwarves. You want more dwarves like Thord and Joran and, Torgin. Dwarves that have unique head sculptures, dwarves that have names. Is that fair to say?
That is a fair statement, and I understand where you're going, but I'll allow you to continue.
Because here is Deluxe Legion Builder Dwarf. Here is Deluxe Goblin, which, let's be honest, is just a dwarf wearing a goblin mask for Halloween. We've got Bronze Dwarf Legion Builder. Okay, so these have all come out recently. Krotos, who's just a dwarf with hooves. And then we've got Bardric and Valak, two figures which have full-size bodies, but their bodies are so cool for making dwarves. Have you seen all of the dwarf customs that Joe Vassapolo has been doing with these?
I've been watching.
You've been watching. I'm going to open some. So I'm going to challenge you, Mr. King Under the Mountain, to say you have gotten lots of dwarf-like parts recently in the line. What would you say to that?
Joe, you're correct. And Varg with the short legs.
There you go. Varg is another one. I didn't even grab Varg. He's totally one too. You have an absolute wealth of dwarven figures lately. I take it by your silence. You're just agreeing.
No, I'm letting you do whatever magic it is that you're working on right now. All I'm gonna say is that if you give us 10 things that look like a dwarf, we're gonna say where's the one that's the actual dwarf. If you give us a dwarf, we're gonna go great. I want the next one. So we'll never be happy until we just keep getting the next one, and we know that there's a next one.
You could have just stopped by saying we'll never be happy.
Yeah.
That would have been a fine statement. Seeing the ones that Joe did with the Bardric build, I think were so cool. So right now I'm messing with the Goblin. I'm using the Goblin's arms and legs, but I'm using the Bardric torso and loin piece because I like those. Now, which figures do you have from the Alithia wave so far?
I currently have Krotos, and I do have the deluxe dwarf builder. The rest of my stuff will be from retailers or the local shows.
Okay.
And Krotos is amazing. I mean, it's a beautifully done, well done, painted character. That copper is just something else. And the colors match really well. Excuse me. And yes, as time goes on and as I do acquire more figures, there will be a lot of customs that will be built off of that Krotos body.
That's because he's a dwarf.
That's because he was a goat. That's because he was a goat built on a dwarf frame.
A dwarf by any other name?
No. There's no goats under the mountain. There's kings under the mountain. There's no,
There's no goats under the mountain. I seem to remember you guys suggesting that the studio should put out a goat.
Sure, for a dwarf to ride. I don't want, I want a dwarf. I don't want an anthropomorphic, figure. I say the critters need to stay with Mythic Customs. That could have been a great dwarven healer. Just saying, slap a head on there, slap some boots on there, and boom, it was a dwarven healer.
So the Bardric body and the Goblin body doesn't actually have a dwarf neck peg. So I'm gonna pull a dwarf neck peg off this one here.
Yes, Colin. Goats on the mountain, not under the mountain. They climb the mountain.
Just dropping stuff. Okay, let's see how this goes. So I do have a custom head here. This is a custom head that Emil Wickman sculpted and that my pal Drew Grubbs painted up. So I threw that one on here.
While you're putting that together, JMac77, how long since the last named dwarf? And I believe that was Torgen, wasn't it?
It was Torgen.
And that was Wasteland.
Unless you count unless you count Krotos or
Not a dwarf.
Varg.
Not a dwarf. Not a dwarf. That's fun.
And these parts are awesome, dude. These new parts are so good for making dwarves.
I'm going to have so much pizza and sit and play and make customs when I get all of my figures together. It's just going to be, all my figures are going to slide together so nice because they'll be greasy from the pizza. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, look at that. Torgen head. Maybe we should get another dwarf head, a named character dwarf head. It'd be fun.
So that's what you want. That's what we've got to be specific. What you want are named dwarven characters.
Official 4 horsemen dwarven named characters.
Okay. Joe Vassapolo has been ringing that bell. He's here saying I'm trying to find his comments where he's talking about that he's been working on that internally.
I know. I see it. Joe's our inside. I don't want to say it too loud because I don't want him to get in trouble. He's our inside guy for pushing the dwarven agenda.
Joe says, yes. I have a lot of goat heads over here. My wife is concerned.
Gonna have a Toy Forge in stock sale of goat heads in the near future, I feel like.
You did say there's no goats under the mountain. I feel like your fellow kings are going to have words with you on that.
Probably. We'll deal with that tomorrow. That's tomorrow.
They're afraid that, like, no, we've been ringing the bell for a goat mount. You just messed it up.
For a goat mount, but not a goat mountain. He's not under the mountain. I want a ride. I want to ride the goat. I don't want to look to my left and see a goat holding a stick going, hey, man, I'm going to heal you. I wanted to be a dwarf.
I will admit, and I said this today when I posted my dwarven custom, I don't know. Like when people ask me what my favorite race in Mythos are, I honestly don't know the answer to that. Unlike you, there's no one race that I love above all the others. I will admit that the dwarves are one of my favorites. And the dwarves are my favorite build. So the short stockiness, you mentioned earlier that those custom feet really have a great center of gravity.
Yeah.
But by and large, just the dwarves in general have a really great center of gravity. They're nice and stocky. It is my favorite overall build. I do a lot of custom critters. Any critter that I can make that's not meant to be super tiny, badgers, skunks, turtles, I always use the dwarven style build. So it is my favorite build, and I would also like to see more.
There we go. That's what I wanted to hear. I got 2 down. After RetroCon, we'll see after I talk to a few more people.
Who are you going to talk to?
I don't know. There might be a few guys I might be able to talk to at a table in Oaks, Pennsylvania, September 24th and 25th about the dwarven agenda and how it needs to be addressed.
I think that you should spend all weekend telling Jim about this. I have a feeling that'll go over really well.
Well, I like Jim, and I think Jim likes me, and I don't want to ruin that.
Joe said it too. Joe says, get on Jim about it.
I had plans of just sitting with with Eric Treadaway and just kind of put my arm around him and just kind of say, look, I got this idea about cosmic dwarves. And while we're at it, I got this idea about more mythic dwarves, and let's just see what happens. Baku Prime, the dwarven agenda. See, I'm trying to push the dwarven agenda. I like that.
So everyone keeps asking about Cosmic Dwarves. This was the one that I did as part of the Cosmic Customs kind of thing that we did last year after we debuted the Cosmic Legions One Wave. A couple of customizers. I led a project with a few other customizers, Joe being one of them, where we did. These are actually prototype parts. So all of the cosmic pieces that you see on this, the guns, those guns that are in his wrist there, those are just drilled in. But those pauldrons that you see, those legs and everything, the feet, those are all 3D printed prototype pieces that we had access to do this. So this is my take on a cosmic dwarf.
It's awesome. And the cosmic parts that are coming out, like one of the things I'm most excited for are the new forearms with the plugs, to be able to have so much interchangeability, to be able to do, your imagination's your limit on what we'll be able to come up with as third-party companies. I see a lot of clear resins and a lot of cool holographic stuff coming through. Customs, but they weren't figures that came out of the box with the white twisty ties or anything like that.
Yep.
I just need a few more like that with names, new characters. That's all. I'm not asking for much.
Well, we've heard you saying it. It's the request is noted. So we'll have to see what the future holds.
That's it. I've got time. In the
interim, it's not going anywhere.
In the interim, we'll still just be loud and proud.
I would not expect anything else. So let me ask you this then, other than the really simple answer of more dwarves, named dwarves, what other kinds of things are you looking forward to, both in future Mythic and in future Cosmic waves?
To go to Cosmic, I am a huge fan of mechs. One of my favorite toy lines was right at the end of my toy collecting age, was a series called Exo Squad.
Yeah.
They were 3-inch figures that fit inside of like 7-inch frames. I actually have all but one of the frames that you had seen in the TV show. There's a couple others that were like the European exclusives and things that were a lot harder to come by. I have almost, and a lot of the Robotech stuff at the end. Robotech kind of merged in between there. But I would like to see smaller framed, maybe dwarf-like or goblin-like guys, maybe operating in some sort of troll. I'm using characters as references, but a 12-inch, troll size, mech that would be fun. That would be all, maybe a regular 6-inch figure wouldn't be able to fit in them, but maybe the smaller guys, to make up for their lack of size, suddenly are operating, I don't know, space mining mechs and, fighter mechs and all kinds of cool, fun stuff. So, and I know CB is a fan of mechs as well. So
he is a fan of mechs.
Hopefully,
mechs and monkeys.
Hopefully that doesn't fall on deaf ears at some point down the line. But for Mythic, I am super excited for the Aetheron and Necronomicus wave that'll that'll be announced. I would love to see a 2.0 of maybe one or a version 2. I know we use the term 2.0, but sometimes that term gets confusing because we've got 2.0. So, like, I'd like to maybe say we start using like version 2 or Mark 2 of a character. I'd like to see a version 2 or a Mark 2 of maybe a Gideon Heavensbrand, or Sir Ignatius, or someone along those lines. And then the skeletons, if there is one particular race of characters The undead stuff really doesn't do a whole lot for me. The vampires, I'm indifferent on. The skeletons, for me, the skeletons I feel like are good diorama pieces to kind of just have, or if you're just looking to lay waste to a bunch of characters, maybe the skeletons are cool. I know I'm in the minority in that thought, but I'm used to being in the minority for my favorite line, so why not be in the minority of my least favorite line? So I'm really, really excited to see what we could get for new torsos. Really just new torsos. The new chest plugs is a huge game changer for all of us right now, especially the third party companies. I mean, Wolf King opened it right up and said, "Hey, look what we've got." And I know I've got a few things, and I've seen Noble Bear has a few things, and I'm curious to see what some of the other third parties start producing stuff.
I think
should be a really, really good time for creativity for us as customizers, because, and like you said before, the third or the Mythic Legion connectivity, like the chest torso, you can't beat it. So now we're not worrying about third party stuff and resin and shrinkages and things not being quite right and not having to use blue tack. Now we'll be able to put a new plug in, a new chest plug in, and now you got a totally different character.
Yeah, I think Chris from Mythic Bits, he's got some chest plates coming out as well.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
It will really be a good time. That's fun. That's a lot of fun.
So this is Valak torso, Bronze Dwarf Legion builder with that barbarian head, which doesn't look like a dwarf to me, but I know a lot of you guys who are just anything that even like smells a little bit like a dwarf. You kings are all about it. So
put the Xenothon dark arm, the gray arms on it, and then he's a dark evil dwarf.
Yep. Yeah, it's a cool little build. I like this, especially just from messing around and playing around here.
That's it.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
No,
the Kronos is basically a dwarf as is. Just throw some of those like brown leather feet from the hand and feet pack on them, and you're good to go. Or those custom feet that you showed earlier. I mean, that works perfect.
Well, it was funny. I was actually on vacation when my packages arrived from the Horsemen, from the Alithia wave, and my daughter was home, and I said, she was coming down Friday night. I was like, you need to bring me these figures. I can't not be away on vacation knowing that I have Mythic Legion figures that I have not opened yet.
Yeah.
So Friday night, we were leaving Saturday. It's not like it was like the difference of 18 hours. I could have been home and opened it, but it was 18 hours more that I didn't want to wait. So she brought him. She came down and, got to give her the hug. Yeah, it's great to see you. Okay, do you have my stuff? Give me my stuff. So I'm sitting there and I'm I'm grabbing water and I'm throwing it in the microwave, trying to heat it up to boil, pop the hooves off so I can put the feet on. Those hooves didn't last 2 minutes on my Kronos, and suddenly he had legs, he had feet again, and the gloves. I love how the new hands have a little bit more elasticity to them. They feel like you can stretch them but they go back really well.
Yep.
Whatever the new chemical makeup of that plastic is a little softer, and it's going to be it's going to be fun. I know a lot of the older figures over time, they feel like they kind of stretch a little, but these will hold different size handles along the way.
Very good.
Walter asked if we can have something smaller than a dwarf, like a munchkin.
It's actually been something that, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I did the gnome kits, was I wanted some smaller type characters. And, we've asked that question. I personally asked that question on the air to Eric a few times. And yeah, I mean, it's absolutely something. The thing is, when you ask Eric, could we ever get this? The answer is almost always yes, possibly. big plans for the future. There's a lot of things that he'd love to get to. It's just a matter of finding the right time to get it done. That's been something since day one, is not just squeezing things in because we can, but figuring out where does it make the most sense to introduce these new sizes, these new races, whatever.
I mean, we can only release so many figures at one point.
Yeah.
And we don't want to exhaust the line so quickly either. So, it's been fun. I mean, look, in the time frame we've gotten this line, we've a lot of races that's been covered already. I mean, and then with the third party stuff that's been out, we've been able to expand on some of that a little bit too.
Well, it's nice too, because what I appreciate personally as a fan, because I work there, but I'm still a fan, and I approach so much of this from that fan perspective. I really appreciate that a lot of those tried and true fantasy races, like dwarves, like elves, like skeletons and orcs, that we get those, but we also get stuff that's unexpected. I mean, I've been very clear in saying that the Jin character from the Poxus wave is one of my favorite figures in the line. When people get that figure in hand and they see the detail work on that piece, the paint applications, the sculpture, it's going to blow them away. Genies are not the kind of thing I think you would normally associate with high fantasy the same way you would elves and dwarves and so forth. Similarly, new races like the Umengeist from, that same wave with Thrace. I love the fact that we get that kind of variety, and it's not just mining those more commonly known fantasy races.
Well, and to expand on that wave, I mean, the magic-based characters that we're going to be able to get now. I mean, it's kind of funny. We've had a magic-based faction, and we've seen glimpses of it, but we're getting like what we've all grown up and watched on TV and seen in movies and books. We're getting some of these wizards now, and with the soft goods and the advancements in some of the technology, I mean, even from when Eric was still hand sculpting stuff to now being able to do it digitally, they're gonna be able to bring us more stuff than we're gonna be able to handle in time, and I can't wait. I can't wait for it all. Like, I will get wizards, and I will get goblins, and I will get, the genie. That genie is gonna, or that Jin is really, really cool. And the fact that they're doing it in the brute scale,
yep,
is a nice, and that's another thing. The different sizes and the scales. I mean, there's not another line that's out right now that can even compete with what the Horseman does in terms of creating different sizes, and it all scales and interacts well with each other. They all complement each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the cool things too that I get excited for, because as someone that gets to kind of play with this library a bit, I get really excited for the addition of new parts and what that means for the future.
Yeah.
Every time, and I know, people have, that's been one of the complaints about Mythic Legions that you hear, is there's so much parts reuse. And it's in some ways unfair, because I think the toy industry as a whole, the action figure industry, is very heavy on parts reuse. I've always said that, what I appreciate about Legions is, even though we see a lot of the same parts, they're put together in different configurations. So it's not just like using the same exact build over and over.
Right.
But outside of that, from Irithyr forward, I think we've seen such an incredible infusion of new parts. The Alithia wave, when people talked about Bardric and Valak being essentially head-to-toe new figures, that's really, really cool. And we're seeing more and more of that. I love the possibilities that these new library editions pose for the future, not only as customizers mixing and matching, but as official figures in the line that are going to borrow from that library.
Yeah, I think that Aether was really, really a game changer for all of us. It wasn't like, those that complain the reuse, okay, fine. There was a lot of that. But over time, we had gotten the 1.0 figures, and we had gotten the 2.0 figures, and we got the goblin. So we've gotten new parts along the way. But then when Aether hit, it was just like, hold my beer. Look at all the new things I'm going to give you all at once. And then it was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I want, that Magnus Vorthog torso was just, it was just awesome. I mean, you could put it on anything. You can make a Viking with it. You can make a dwarf with it. You can make whatever you want to do with it. It's just a stunning piece of work. And, we only got a few, how many times have we seen that now reused?
I mean, it's starting to make more of a presence, but it's a good point, because when we first saw that thicker torso and that new waist piece, we saw it, as you just mentioned, on Magnus and Vorthog. We did not see it on a dwarf. Those two pieces are the perfect dwarf midsection. They are so good. I mean, when we got to the deluxe dwarf Legion builder, that this figure uses those particular pieces. So it's a perfect example of those getting introduced for one use in Orc, and a kind of Magnus is just like an epic knight type hero type character, but you bring them in almost like a paladin type look. You bring them in for that, and they just become the perfect pieces to use for future dwarf builds. That's exactly what I'm talking about, where new library editions, make their way into the line, and the possibilities that they open up are absolutely incredible.
Well, and it's funny with that wave. Speaking of the Aether wave, that red shield soldier / Hellfire Goblin.
Yep.
I actually made a lot of dwarves using that torso because I liked it. Made it a little bit smaller than the standard armor. Like it just has a little bit more, just a hair thinner, and it looked really good with a lot of dwarves to make customs that way as well. And then
it's weird.
It's just off just slightly, but for a dwarf, it's good. Okay, cool. It makes them a little smaller. I get that. That works. But what was nice is with the reuse of parts, and as more soft good companies come out, like Maxberg, like Kai Labs, like Strupp Family Crafts, you start going, all right, cool. Well, I got a lot of these armored torsos from the older waves. I'm just going to wrap them in soft goods. And now, I'm not using new parts for that. So no parts go to waste. You just, you find a way to make them all work and in future customs.
I'm looking for all my parts that I've tossed on the ground. Need a net peg. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of great parts, mixing and matching these pieces. I'm obviously joking with you about the lack of dwarves. And
I know.
But it is cool. And all this stuff, like I said, there are so many ideas and so many possibilities for the line. It is genuinely just finding the right time to get them done. Anthony, we are at 9:09 right now, so we are coming up on time. Can you believe that we're already 90 minutes in, that the conversation has just been going on for that long?
Wait till we go another 90 minutes in the green room. In actuality, we'll probably be asleep in 10 minutes after we go off.
Old men over here.
What time are you up this morning?
This morning was about 5 o'clock, but I went to bed really early last night. We had all these rainstorms that you and I talked about before the show. So the night before was a very sleepless night, worrying about potential flooding and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'm in my basement right now, so a flood in my basement would be catastrophic. So I get worried about that.
Yeah, I have a lot of electronic parts that would really ruin my day if they got wet. So I understand. But
yes,
like you being up early, I was up at 4:45 and at the gym at 5:30, and yeah, we're definitely pushing bedtime o'clock here pretty soon.
So with that, we're going to call it an evening. Anthony, anything else that you want to mention before we call it here?
Sure. Guys, I'm at the Toy Forge and Facebook, on Instagram. Come see myself, Len LaGuardia with Wolf King Customs, Patrick Boyle, Robert Cookie. Come see Walter. Come see Lord Stephen Bashotti. Come see the Four Horsemen at RetroCon, September 24th and 25th in Oaks, Pennsylvania. It's going to be a great time. You guys will all understand why I love this show as much as once you get 10 feet into the place. So it'll be a great time.
Awesome. And if you need more information on that, you go to sourcehorseman.com/events. That'll get you all that information, not only on RetroCon, but also the other events that are coming up soon, including LegionsCon. Thank you all very much for joining me. Anthony, thank you for joining. I will see you all next week. I will be live at Four Horsemen Studios next Wednesday. I will be there most of next week doing some in-studio work. So I don't know what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be talking about, but we'll be doing it from the studio. I will see you then. Same Mythic time, different Mythic place. Thank you all very much. You have a good night. I got to go. I got to find my closing music. Oh, here it is.